Hello, Arizona alumni and friends. I'm Lynette Marshall, President and CEO of the University of Iowa Center for Advancement, and we are delighted to bring the University of Iowa to you virtually this evening, even though we would love to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Although we are separated by hundreds of miles, Hawkeye pride runs deep in Arizona. We are proud to have more than 6,000 Hawkeyes living in Arizona and 33 current students from your great state who are enrolled at the University of Iowa. So it's a privilege for us to provide a campus update for you this evening. And while we can't be with you in person, we do have some terrific guests lined up for this program. You are going to hear from University of Iowa President Bruce Harold, Dr. Gerard Clancy, Senior Associate Dean and Professor of Psychiatry in the Carver College of Medicine, Marissa Mueller, a current Iowa student and member of the Iowa Women's Track and Field team, who is also our 2021 Rhodes Scholar, and head football coach Kirk Ferentz. You'll hear more from them momentarily, but before we begin, I want to thank you for supporting the University of Iowa during these remarkable and unprecedented times. I know that every one of us has been affected by this pandemic, whether directly or indirectly. But as our campus colleagues and students have navigated this past year, we've always felt the tremendous support of our Hawkeye Nation. Whether you've already attended one of our virtual events, kept in touch by reading the Iowa Magazine or other university publications, caught one of our terrific Hawkeye games on television, or made a gift to support our students and faculty, we are deeply grateful that you have continued to engage with and support the University of Iowa. My colleagues and I at the Center for Advancement are so proud to support the university, especially this past year, as we faced unprecedented changes and disruptions. Last March, shortly after the pandemic forced classes to move online and our hospitals began to fill, we launched two key emergency funds, one for students and one for frontline healthcare workers at the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. And of course, alumni and friends from around the world answered our call for donations. To date, donors have contributed more than $450,000 to support their most crucial needs. Students in need have been able to apply for emergency aid and have used their funds to help pay rent, upgrade technology so they can successfully access their virtual classes, and address other pressing needs. And as you know, throughout the pandemic, thousands of University of Iowa healthcare employees, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, housekeeping and janitorial staff, medical receptionists, and more, have been on the front line of care, often working extra shifts. Gifts from alumni and friends have helped them cover extra childcare, isolate in temporary housing, and meet their individual needs during this extended pandemic. If you're interested in making a gift to support students and healthcare workers, you can do so via the link below. Over the past year, we have witnessed the extraordinary lengths our healthcare heroes have gone to for Iowans while leading the world in research toward effective treatments and a vaccine. It's been a privilege for us to be able to share their stories, both online and in Iowa Magazine, of our leading researchers, including Stanley Perlman, a professor of microbiology and immunology who has studied coronaviruses for 38 years, or genetics expert Val Sheffield, who developed a COVID test and converted part of his lab to help fight the pandemic. Mike Brownlee, our chief pharmacy officer, as a key player in the hospital incident command system, helped ensure our hospital staff had the appropriate personal protective equipment during a national shortage. And Dr. Patricia Winokur, executive dean of the Carver College of Medicine and a professor of internal medicine, infectious diseases at the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. Dr. Winokur led Iowa's COVID vaccine trials. Of course, we have continued to connect with alumni and friends around the world through a variety of virtual events and programs like this one. In fact, since April, we've offered 200 virtual events, from chats with notable alumni to Professor Jay Holstein's Golden Anniversary Lecture, to a discussion I was privileged to have with Professor Emerita Marilyn Robinson about her new novel, Jack. While this virtual programming has been a great way to connect with all of you, we all very much look forward to the day when we can gather and see you again in person, especially in sunny Arizona. And until then, I'm happy to present you with today's program. We're going to start by welcoming our 21st president of the University of Iowa, Bruce Harold. Thank you, Bruce, for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Lynette. First of all, many thanks for joining us in this very unusual format. While Mary and I would vastly prefer to be with you in person, I'm sure you can all understand, given this pandemic, why we're doing it this way. Mary and I are safe and hope all of you and your families are as well. We had two objectives as we entered this past semester. One, keep everyone safe. And two, keep our undergraduate and graduate, as well as professional students' academic careers on track. I'm pleased to report that both have been met. This is a direct result of our amazing team's incredible efforts. Students wore masks, socially distanced, and largely curtailed their social activities. Faculty lifted many of their courses where possible to online. In fact, well over 70% of our student credit hours last semester were taught online. I taught my leadership course this past semester, and I can attest firsthand to the challenges in taking a course based on Socratic method of instruction online, but we did it. And finally, our staff did an amazing job changing air handling equipment, redefining ingress and egress in all of our buildings, installing audio and video equipment in all classrooms, etc., etc., etc. And then all of us, when possible, worked from home. Thanks to all of this effort, I'm pleased to report that no student has been hospitalized, no faculty or staff member has been infected from campus activities, our residence halls have remained open and safe, and most importantly, our students' academic careers have continued to stay on track. The impact on UIHC has been staggering, as they've had to dramatically shift operations to preserve personal protective equipment and keep our frontline workers safe. They've had to deal with several surges in COVID-19 and have pioneered several nationally, worldwide leading-edge therapeutic treatments, as well as successfully testing several new vaccines. To date, we have now vaccinated well over 9,000 frontline workers and will soon initiate vaccinations to a broader group as directed by the Iowa Department of Public Health. We also lengthened our recently completed January term to allow our students to successfully complete a full 3 credit hour course. Again, we did this to help them stay on track academically. And when we planned this new novel idea for the January term, we thought maybe 200 would partake in this expanded term. And in fact, we had over 800 students enrolled. You'll hear in a few minutes from Marissa Mueller. She will likely mention the incredibly challenging times in athletics. They're experiencing incredible issues. Marissa is not only our 22nd Rhodes Scholar, but also a student athlete. She's an amazing person who Mary and I have had the pleasure to know since she first arrived on campus. The success of our students is at the heart of who we are as a university, and over the past 5 years, we've witnessed some amazing accomplishments from our students. The university has been named a top producer of Fulbright Scholars 5 years in a row now, with 97 Hawkeyes honored with this scholarship. Additionally, 3 University of Iowa students have been named Rhodes Scholars, placing UI among the top 40 in the U.S. all time. These remarkable Hawkeyes obtain their success through hard work as well as support from faculty and staff on a daily basis. It's just another example of our campus demonstrating the caliber of an Iowa education and raising the university's profile worldwide. So what's next? This current semester, this spring, we will operate in the same mode that we have in the past with the hopes we can return to full-time face-to-face operations next fall. Importantly, we will not do so without a vaccine in place, and we'll make sure we don't go there without an appropriate set of safety precautions for all our students and all members of our community. Finally, permit me to mention briefly what we've been doing to address what I consider to be our greatest strategic challenge: the consistent underfunding of our university by our state legislature as well as our Board of Regents. The state of Iowa has consistently spent more and more on many activities, and in fact, its budget has gone up multiple-fold while underfunding higher ed. Most public universities have taken up their tuitions to compensate for this. In Iowa, our regents have kept our tuition so low, we are now almost the lowest in our peer group. To address this fiscal mess, if you will, we've done several things. One, we've changed our resource allocation process to make sure every dollar is extremely well spent. Two, we've consolidated our central administration. In fact, we've recently received national recognition for being one of the leanest institutions in the Big Ten. And thirdly, we executed a pioneering transaction that added $1 billion in new resources that will fund our strategic plan over the next 50 years. Nat, I'm quite proud of what we've accomplished and truly believe we're poised for many years ahead to succeed. With that, I'd now like to turn the discussion over to Dr. Jerry Clancy. Dr. Clancy rejoined our Harvard College of Medicine in July as Senior Associate Dean for External Affairs. Prior to a stellar career as Dean of the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine and President of the University of Tulsa, and he spent 8 years as President of the University of Oklahoma, Tulsa. Jerry, welcome back and take it away.
Well, thank you for having me. And the first thing I'd like to say is thank you to President Harold. A few years back, Forbes magazine ranked the most difficult CEO jobs in America, and university president was number one, and that was before a pandemic. So thank you, President Harold, for your service to our university, to our students, and to our alumni. And thank you to Lynette and her team for being able to keep us together and pull this together during a time when logistics is just not easy. You've done a great job, and your team is just a joy to work with. I'm going to share my screen now and talk with you about what the past few months have been like and some areas that I have some concern. So let's talk about the impact of COVID-19 on mental health of our society, and just as important, how University of Iowa Healthcare is responding. When I am with friends on Zoom or family on the phone or on Zoom, I do often get this question of what's it like working inside of University of Iowa hospitals and clinics during a pandemic? And my answer oftentimes surprises them. I tell them I have never been prouder to be an alum, to be a Hawkeye, and to be part of this team. University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics has always been an extraordinary place, a place that I feel like I grew up in, with my father being faculty here as well. But during this time of unprecedented stress and demands for healthcare in such difficult conditions, the faculty and staff and residents and students have answered the call, and it has been a wonderful place to work in. It's amazing how people have come together and been able to do just extraordinary things for our patients and serve the entire state in such a wonderful way. One of the areas that we've led has been in the Pfizer vaccine trial. And Dr. Pat Winokur, who's the executive dean of the Harvard College of Medicine, was the lead investigator for the University of Iowa Pfizer vaccine trial. And we contributed greatly to being able to get that vaccine out to the rest of America. And I myself feel very fortunate. I qualified for the study. I'm old enough, and I'm a frontline healthcare worker. And I was the first in the study. I was patient 001. This is some of my sign-up cards, 001, to get the vaccine. So this is me getting the vaccine in July. I'm very hopeful about this vaccine, and I hope you are too. When you get the chance to get the vaccine, I strongly recommend that you go forward with it. You have a vaccine. My arm was pretty sore, but on the other hand, as Paula said, that sore arm hurt so good, just like John Mellencamp would say, because I knew the vaccine was working. So go forward, get that vaccine. It's part of the solution on our way out of this. Alongside being so hopeful, I do have concerns. And I had concerns about our society even before the pandemic started in the field of mental illness and addiction. And this is a graph of mortality curves. And these are different countries. Here's Australia, and here's Canada, and here's the UK. And for the most part, mortality has been going down across the world, which is a good thing, except there is a part of our society here in America where mortality has actually been worsening. It has been going up, and that is for men and women ages 50 to 54. And you see this curve goes from 1990 out to 2015 or so. And the causes of increased mortality in this group are what we call the deaths of despair, which are drug and alcohol and suicide mortality. This comes at a time when there's an incredible demand for psychiatrists. Merritt Hawkins estimates that we'll be 16,000 psychiatrists short by 2025 at a time when the need is just so great, so great. They've never seen demand for psychiatrists like this. And in my work, we're really, really, really busy. And then the pandemic came along and has really added to the level of distress. And some of those early indicators of distress that we started to see were increases in calls to our national suicide hotline, increases in alcohol consumption, and increases in use of substances such as marijuana. Unfortunately, we've also seen increases in opioid overdose deaths and methamphetamine deaths as the pandemic has rolled on. So these were early indicators that our society was struggling with all the stresses of the pandemic. Some surveys that played this out as well. In April of this year, a survey was repeated from what was done in 2018. And what you see is that for individuals in this survey that noted serious psychological distress, in 2018, it was 4%, but in 2020, that had risen to 14%. By June of this year compared to June of last year, we see a tripling of the level of anxiety in our society. We see a fourfold increase in depressive disorder conditions, and we see a more than doubling of suicidal thought. And that's in our young adults, our Latinx and Black community members, and amongst essential workers. And it's not just adults. This is a measure between 2019 in the solid blue line and 2020 in the dotted line, the dashed line, for children emergency visits for mental health related conditions. And again, you see a significant increase in children reporting to the emergency rooms with behavioral health crises. So it's adults and it's our children that are really struggling right now. So the work that we get to do on this at the University of Iowa is across the hospital. This is my team. I'm a consult liaison psychiatrist. So I serve the entire hospital's psychiatric needs. We are on the medical wards. We're in the medical intensive care unit, the surgical intensive care unit. We're in the emergency room a lot. We're on the COVID isolation units. We respond to staff in duress with very agitated patients. And we average about 7 miles a day on our feet serving this hospital. And this is my team of resident physicians and medical students, and they're great. They're great to work with. And it's very rewarding work. It's important work. And we need to be able to move fast because there are needs all across the hospital. And what we're seeing is, as you expect, we're seeing these surges. And we they almost come in 2-week phases. We see a surge in positive cases, and about 2 weeks later, we see a surge in COVID hospitalizations, and then we see a surge, unfortunately, 2 weeks later in deaths. And right now, we're averaging about 3,000 deaths per day across the United States from COVID. And I expect this to continue through March, at least, until the amount of vaccination that we can start getting across the country really starts to take hold. But it's going to take a while for the vaccine to be able to have an impact on this death rate. What is not seen as easily, unless you're working in the hospital, is the fact that the non-COVID conditions in the hospital are very, very intense and complex as well. And this is measured by what we call case mix index. And it is a global number of patients with the number of complex conditions they are reporting together as a collective. And so our case mix index over these past several months has been setting records. Never has the case mix index been this high at University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. Part of the reason for that is that patients are delaying care for critical care issues, heart attacks and strokes. And so when they arrive with us, they're in very, very dire need. But we're also seeing increases in patients who are suicidal, who are going through alcohol withdrawal, who are have psychiatric conditions, who are now off their medications and who are psychotic. Up to 30% of our emergency room visits now are for psychiatric services. And so it's why we're down there all the time. And we also have incredible demand on our inpatient beds. We have about 100 beds for psychiatry here at the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, and they are full all the time. As soon as somebody is discharged, there is somebody waiting to come into that hospital for their needs. So how have we responded? Well, I'm really pleased to say, it's one of the things that makes me so proud to work for the University of Iowa, is that we've gone faster, we've gone farther, and we've been more creative despite the pandemic. And that's in our research areas, our education areas, and our care areas. For example, this is Mark Nishu. He's an MD PhD here. And the work that he is doing is on treatment-resistant clinical depression and PTSD. And he's using an old medication, but in a new way. Ketamine has been around for several decades, originally was an anesthetic. But what we're finding that at much lower doses, but by way of IV and by nasal spray, ketamine can be very helpful for clinical depressions that previously didn't respond to anything. And it's working in a new neurotransmitter system called the glutamate system. And for some patients, their depression and their suicidal thinking can be relieved within minutes. So this is just breakthrough work as far as being able to get back to treating these depressions across our society that have been difficult to treat. And Mark's done a really, really good job. Another thing that has changed during this pandemic is how we do our work. And this is my desktop setup here at the University of Iowa. And it wouldn't have looked like this a year ago. But now I have a camera for doing a lot of work with patients and for teaching and for educating across the state, as well a microphone that goes with that. I have headphones so that the quality of the recording and conversations we have is of high quality. We have 2 screens going all the time. I can connect with the electronic medical record that links up with many of our community access hospitals in the rural areas. I have video connections via Zoom and Skype and Teams and GoToMeeting. I work with new podcast software, which I'll show you in a minute. And then I've got my iPad going most of the time. And that's how I directly link with patients. It's the easiest way for their phone to link up with me is via iPad. And then I've got my goggles for when I go into the ICU, into the emergency room, and my N95 mask. And here's my shield that we wear all day long. And then we've been drinking lots of coffee as well because it's really busy right now. But this is a totally different way of doing work. How we're delivering care has changed dramatically. This is a map of Iowa by zip code on our inpatient services. And we're quite proud that we've been able to continue to serve patients from all across Iowa for the inpatient psychiatry service. But this map on the right is our telemedicine visits that we are doing. And you can see that our zip code reach for psychiatric patients is all across Iowa and across Illinois as well. So despite the pandemic, we're delivering new ways of care. And a year ago, we would have not had a map like this. And this is also links to what we've done with our COVID positive patients who have been quarantining at home. They don't need to be in the clinic. They don't need to be in the hospital. We just need to watch over them carefully. And we've been able to set up a system that can see over 100,000 televisits for the COVID positive patients. It works for the patients, keeping them safe at home. It works for us, keeping them out of the hospital and keeping our other patients safe. And it's really quite impressive how quickly that was stood up and how it's done its work. How we are educating physicians has changed dramatically. The amount of medical knowledge that is coming forward that we need to get out to our practicing physicians across the state of Iowa is at a pace like I've never seen before. but we're at a time when we can't pull together conferences in our traditional way. So we've really ramped up our podcasts. And this is our podcast platform called Rounding at Iowa. And I get to be the host. And right in this screenshot, we're working with the hospice folks and interviewing them on the details of hospice during the pandemic. And we're now available on Spotify and iTunes and Google Podcasts. And these are some of our series. We did a whole series on COVID, vaccines and advanced ICU care and long haulers. We did a series on health disparities. We did a series on end of life. And we've done series on well-being during and after the pandemic. These are CME talks for our physicians to be able to get their annual number of credits so they can keep their license, but we've also made them available to the general public. So all you have to do is Google Rounding at Iowa, and you'll start to see some of our talks that we have. And we've written them for physicians, but also for the general public, so they can listen in. I'm also concerned with how our frontline healthcare workers are doing themselves during the pandemic. And we learned early on that this work is very stressful. And in Italy, up to 49% of the healthcare workers were reporting symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, another 25% with depression, another 20% with anxiety. And those that are younger, those that are women, those that have been exposed to COVID, and those that have had colleagues that have died from COVID are those that are the most vulnerable for these post-traumatic symptoms. And here in the US, what we're seeing is some physicians are deciding to close their practice. 16,000 physician practices closed in 2020, another 8,000 plan to close this year. And we're seeing increases in rates of burnout among our physicians. It was at about 40% in 2019, but it's now up to 58%. And some of the frustrations for these physicians that are closing their practice are that they've been concerned that the public is not heeding the safety guidelines, and the anti-science efforts have been very frustrating to them. But we're not seeing that at the University of Iowa. We're not seeing a huge number of physicians retiring at all. And that really is a testament to our leadership here. Brooks Jackson and Suresh have just done a fantastic job of creating an environment that the work that we continue to do, despite the stresses, is worthwhile and we feel safe. We learned from the Vietnam War veterans that the immediate period around traumatic events is really important as far as support services. And our Vietnam veterans did not have the support that they needed when they came back to the U.S. from Vietnam. And so from learning from Israel, which takes an entirely different approach, when a traumatic event happens, such as a terror act or act of war, alongside having medical and surgical intensive care services available, they also have mobile psychiatric services available right away to work on preventing PTSD, and it works amazingly. And our leadership here at the University of Iowa has done something very similar. The amount of support that we are receiving at the individual level, and then the work unit level, and the culture of our hospital and clinics level has been extraordinary. We have 24-hour hotline for our employees. We have a team. We have free counseling services. We are working on the work flow that we have so that we can see as many patients as possible in the telepsychiatry and the telemedicine visits to the COVID patients is just an example. But they've also worked very carefully on the culture of UIHC, that we're safe, that we're doing the work, that we're supported, that we're paying great attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really been a joy to be part of this. So that's just a quick overview of what it's like working at University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. And it's been a joy to discuss it with you and give you just a snapshot of what it's like inside. So it's time for me to return to work. I'm going to don my gear again and leave you with one final message. And that is something that you all know from attending Iowa and singing our fight song. So as I leave you, remember, it's time to fight for Iowa. Go Hawks.
Thank you, Dr. Clancy. Our next guest is a highly accomplished student and athlete. Marissa Mueller is a senior from Ontario, Canada, who was recently named a 2021 Rhodes Scholar. This is an incredible honor. Marissa is the 22nd Rhodes Scholar in our university's history and just the second woman to receive this honor. She's also a remarkable Hawkeye track and field athlete who has served on Iowa's Student Athlete Advisory Committee, the Big Ten Advisory Committee, and the Presidential Committee on Athletics, while being the first student athlete representative in student government. She's been named Academic All-Big Ten, a Big Ten Distinguished Scholar, and is a President's List and Dean's List student. I'm pleased to welcome Marissa Mueller.
First and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and for your continued support. I'm Marissa Mueller. I'm tuning in from my home in Canada. I'm from Petrolia, which is a small oil town in southwestern Ontario. Here are a couple pictures from a walk I went on a couple weeks ago with my dad and brother. And here's a picture of my family. Now, my parents are both high school teachers, and when I was in high school, my main sport was actually beach volleyball. I had several knee surgeries, so when I couldn't compete, my coaches thought that javelin might be similar enough to a beach volleyball swing. Now, I had never heard of the NCAA before, and the next thing I knew, I was being recruited to schools in the States to compete as a student athlete. And when I came to visit, I knew that Iowa was the place for me. Everyone was so welcoming and so friendly. I immediately felt like I could become immersed in this community and supported in meeting their standard of excellence. I decided to study biomedical engineering. I knew I was interested in medicine, so entered pre-med, but recognized there was still so much that I had never been exposed to. I loved math and science and fixing things, and Iowa had a fantastic engineering program and relationship with the hospital too. The track and field team has become like family to me. We compete individually, but earn points that contribute to team totals. We train and we push each other to support each other through the highs and the lows. Whenever I wear the Tiger Hawk logo, I know that we're competing for something greater than ourselves. We represent our school, the state, the community, and all those who have invested in making this community so special. I've been fortunate to be a part of the Iowa Student Athlete Advisory Committee. I served last year as vice president and this year as president. I've represented student athletes in University of Iowa student government. I've gotten to collaborate with incredible people across campus, as well as beyond on the Big Ten Student Athlete Advisory Committee. I try to represent and advocate for my teammates as best I can as important decisions are being made, especially now during COVID. Other athletics programming through Student Athlete Academic Services like Hawks to Professionals has just been amazing. I've gotten to shadow in the hospital. Here you can see in pediatric cardiology, electrophysiology in the cath lab, in emergency and sports medicine, orthopedics with mentors that have really helped shape what I hope to do in medicine, and now also in research. Here's a picture of me with Dr. Laura Freylaw in the neuromuscular biomechanics lab. I became a fellow through the Iowa Center for Research by undergraduates and as a Grand Challenge Scholar through the National Academy of Engineering. I have a first author publication and placed third in an international research contest. I even got to present my work across the street from Disneyland in Anaheim, conveniently, and also at the Iowa State Capitol. Now, a huge part of what has made my experience at Iowa so special have really been the staff and the faculty. My coaches and Coach Werski with the throwers have been supportive through all these experiences, both professionally and personally. My academic advisor, Alex, and the staff and Student Athlete Academic Services have been amazing. When I came to Iowa, I remember Dr. Tovar telling my mom not to worry, that I was a part of their family now too, and that I would be well taken care of. So I've been fortunate to receive financial support through athletics, through the Herm and Diane Ranginga and Drs. Amber and Ken Jandik Scholarship. I've earned other academic scholarships like Rhodes Dunlap through honors and the B. Park and Frazee through College of Engineering. This makes a huge difference in minimizing student loans, and financial support has really allowed me to focus more energy on my studies and research and cultivating these experiences. And all of these experiences most recently have led me to submit an application for for the Rhodes Scholarship. I had never really heard of this before and was honored when several professors suggested that I apply, that they would even think that I might be in contention for this. And I was hopeful, but could have never even expected to make it to the interview phase. After the interview, I remember coming out of the attic, setting squirrel traps for my dad to pick up the phone and hear that I had won. I just remember being speechless. That phone call really changed my life. Now I'm going to be leaving for England in the fall to do postgraduate studies, and then I hope to come back to the United States, study for the MD, PhD, and become a physician scientist. Undergrad has gone by so fast, and it's not done yet, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for these opportunities and for your ongoing support. These experiences at Iowa have really enriched my educational experience. They've guided me to the edge of my comfort zone and encouraged me to take that step beyond. And now as I'm getting ready for this next stage and leaving for England, I want to go out into the world, take all these experiences and use them to contribute to positive change in every circle of influence I find myself. I want to learn in order to teach and to give back to all of these people and the programs and these opportunities that have truly shaped and changed my life. I'm so thankful to be a Hawkeye.
Thank you, Marissa. We wish you well in your last semester at Iowa and as you explore new adventures as a Rhodes Scholar in 2021. Our final speaker of the evening needs no introduction. Kirk Ferentz is the winningest coach in Iowa football history and the longest tenured college football coach in the nation. Despite the many challenges of COVID-19, he led the Hawkeyes to a 6-2 record for their abbreviated season. Let's take a look at some fall and winter Hawkeye sports highlights before we turn things over to Coach Ferentz.
Martinez hit, the ball's loose, and Iowa has it. Between the circles, 7. Launches a three-pointer, got it from 25. Nobody going to catch him. 20, 15, 10, 5, goal line, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Oh my goodness, what an exciting day in Kinnick Stadium.
With the snow, with the wind.
Hi, this is Kirk Ferentz, and I just want to welcome all of you. Hopefully you're all enjoying a good winter time. I know you're enjoying better weather than we are. Just talk a little bit about the past year. And, it's really interesting. This is my 22nd year back at Iowa, and certainly the most unprecedented year. And I think that's true of all Americans, just totally unprecedented year. It's interesting, about 13 months ago, we were in San Diego and had a great wrap up to the 19 season with a resounding win over Southern Cal. Came back, we were able to enjoy a really nice break, and really when we got going in January, things were pretty much normal. Our team had a good out-of-season program, put in a good effort, and thought we were on the right steps, right path. And a day I'll never remember is March 13th. That was the last day that everybody was here on campus before leaving for spring break. And that's right at the onset of the pandemic. That Wednesday night was the first night that a NBA game got canceled or stopped due to somebody had an outbreak of COVID. And then the next day was when the Big Ten basketball tournament, they pulled the plug on that. So that Friday when we left, our players left campus, and we knew they'd be gone for a period of time. We had no idea what was in front of us. Thought maybe it'd be a couple weeks, and little did we know what lied ahead. So, as you can imagine, the rest of the semester, we shut down the campus. All the students went online for their studies. It made very challenging for our players to continue training. And many of them had to try to improvise with homemade gyms, that type of thing. We got some, the strength staff got, weights and things like that dispersed around town, but it really posed some real problems for our guys. So certainly it was not a normal period in that regard. And then after that, particularly at the end of May, early June, that's when things really peaked in our country from a social unrest perspective. It certainly impacted and affected our program. And really most of this really started to gain traction after the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. So it was really that end period of May, early June, when things really peaked. And coincidentally, when our players got back to campus June 8th, that was their first day back for the summer program. We had several challenges. We had the challenges of the virus and the protocol that was going to be necessary to attempt to have a summer training period. And then a bigger item was just where our team was at, where the country was at. Certainly affected most college programs. And on June 8th, Monday, June 8th, that was probably the most honest, emotional, rawest meeting I've ever attended in any realm. And certainly that day I think was a big day for our program. It was a lot of honest conversation, very direct conversation. And what that led us to do is cancel the early portion of that week's training program. And what we did was, following that, we broke out into groups, had that team meeting, then broke out into groups, came back the next day, another team meeting, and broke out into groups again. Basically with the quest being, what do we need to do internally? What do we need to look at, discuss as we move forward? And a couple things came out of that. Certainly, probably one of the most important was we advanced or expanded our leadership group. Typically, that was a group of about 10 to 14 players. Last year, I think we had 13 on it at that time. We expanded that to about 24, and included more younger players, more players that were inexperienced on the field, but felt, players that we felt like had something to offer in terms of voicing opinion and offering perspectives. So it was a little bit more of a diverse group in all terms. And so long story short, that began the process of us really re-examining our program. And we have made tweaks, certainly. A lot of them were tweaks that could be done in a short-term basis, and then it's also led, I think, looking at our program on a broader basis and looking at what structural adjustments we can make in the future to make this a more just inclusive environment and a more fair environment for everybody that's involved. And so that was the beginning of that process, and I think we made a lot of strides. One other side thing that came out of that, we formed an advisory committee. One thing I learned after having conversations with a lot of former players is just how candid former players can be and how helpful they can be from offering their perspective, especially when someone's been off campus at least 5 years. I think they have a little different perspective of what the world looks like, what their experience might have been in the program. So we got a lot of good suggestions of that. We did form an advisory committee that currently exists of 11 members. We were meeting weekly initially back in the summertime, then most recently we've gone monthly. And I'm relying on that group to give me a lot of good ideas, and we've had a lot of great discussion, productive discussion, to help to continue to move the program forward. So I think that's been a really positive step as well. Yeah, and then on top of that, Broderick Binns, who did serve as our Director of Player Personnel, he's been elevated to a department position where he's in charge of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. He's heading that up for the entire athletic department now. So I think we've made strides as a department, certainly made strides in our program, and I think that was reflected in the way our players conducted themselves this semester, both on the field and off the field. Did a great job. So just really proud of everybody involved in the program, and really what it got down to was just having good, honest discussion, and gave everybody an opportunity, I think, to learn more about each other, and most importantly, grow and improve. And that's our goal for every one of our players, every one of our coaches. So that thing, I think, was very successful. And the most important thing is that we want to make sure we continue this moving forward and continue it ongoing. So that was certainly one thing that was prominent and the most prominent on our agenda back in June, and has continued to be. And then also during that time period, we wanted to try to train our football team, not knowing if we were going to play this year or not. And as you might imagine, the virus presented a lot of challenges there in terms of, how many people could be in the building, how our players ate, how they showered, trained, et cetera, all those different things. I can't say enough about the work that was done by our strength conditioning staff. But maybe the real heroes in this whole thing, the people that really carried the load, were our training department, Cammie Powell, Dr. Andy Peterson, then all the people that cooperated in the testing, all the protocols that were in place. I can't say enough about how just above and beyond they did. They were just absolutely fantastic, and it enabled us to at least have some semblance of a summer program, although it was very different than anything we've ever done. We did have players have experience with the virus, so that was one item to deal with, and that pulled players out of the program. More problematic was the quarantines, and those were 14 days for anybody that was in close contact, close proximity with anybody that contracted the virus. And we had some players, a handful of players that had over 40 plus days of being quarantined over the course of the summer. So you can only imagine what that's like, especially for a college student. It's just unbelievable. So that was a big challenge for us. Football-wise, we were able to transition a little bit into a semblance of, walk-through practices, they called them, or, skills and drills type things. That began in late June. Or July, and carried into early August. And I think really the biggest date that stands out in my mind was August 11th, when the Big Ten made a decision not to play this fall. And that's a day I'll always remember, right along with the June 8th meeting on August 11th. Gary Barta and I informed our players that the Big Ten had made a decision to delay the season, push it to the spring. And you could just feel the air come out of the room. So again, you're talking about a group of people, a population of people 18 to 22, typically, that have worked extremely hard, dreamt of playing college football. To learn that news was really disheartening. At that point, we sent our players home, and they came back in early September, and we began the training process again, really not knowing what the future looked like. So that was a really rough period for our team, and I can tell you from experience, that's the point where I saw a big spike in our testing numbers, and I'm sure that was just because there was no end goal firmly in place for our guys. So I think what that speaks to is the job that our guys did after the season got reinstated. We had very few issues with the virus moving forward, at least until December. And I really credit that to the fact that our players were extremely disciplined. Nobody's 100% safe, but they did a good job of trying to stay out of harm's way, following proper protocol, and just doing all they could do to be smart and not give themselves a chance to have unnecessary exposure. So, that part finally worked out. And then the Big Ten, the key point to the whole thing, the Big Ten had access to the rapid testing, the daily testing. And to me, that was the breakthrough moment, because it gave us a chance to move away from the quarantine issues, the close contacts and all that. So it really enabled us as a conference to get back up on our feet and start in earnest again. So we got able to, we actually started real practice the 1st of October, the last day of September, and started the season in mid-October. And we looked like a team that needed more work, quite frankly, in our first game. A lot of mistakes, a lot of errors that to me just came from a lack of training. And, probably a period, a monthly, 6-month period that our players had gone through, extremely unusual. Thought we showed improvement in week 2, but still didn't appear to be a really solid football team at that point. And it was in week 3 where we played our best football of that early part of the season against Michigan State, being in Kinnick for the second time. And that really was kind of our breakthrough moment. I think the team really kind of gelled. They found the key to what it takes to be successful. And then week after week, they just kept getting better and kept improving. And to win our sixth game in a row, game 8, but our 6th game in a row against Wisconsin, the way we did it, was really impressive. Wisconsin's a team and program I've got such respect for. They've done a great job, and our guys just played an outstanding football game to win that thing 28-7. And, the joy in the locker room afterwards, it was just everybody in there felt like we had really accomplished something significant. So it's a real credit to our players, the hardships they've been through, all the sacrifices they've made. It really paid off for them, and they realized that. So it was really, certainly a great way to end the season for us, and just really proud of our team for sure. And then after that, the Big Ten aligned to 9th game for everybody, gave everybody an opportunity. As you probably well know, that opportunity was going to be against Michigan in Kinnick Stadium. Tuesday afternoon, we learned that Michigan was not going to be able to, fulfill their end of it. So the game got canceled. That following Sunday, we found out we were going to be in a bowl game in Nashville playing Missouri. And during that period right there, after the Michigan game got canceled, we experienced some COVID issues internally. We had to shut our operation down for about 4 or 5 days, but we were able to get back up and start practicing the weekend after we got the bowl bid that Saturday. We would have done what we'd consider to be a Monday practice. Got our Monday and Tuesday practice done, our first half of the preparation. And it was that Sunday afternoon that we learned that Missouri had to shut their operation down to the virus as well. So those 2 games were, really disappointing. We actually sent our team home that Sunday. We found out about 3 o'clock. We were scheduled to meet with them that night at 5. So we sent them home at 3 o'clock. And, again, just a really disappointing way to finish the season. But as I've told our players, I said, if you look back to August, what it looked like at that point, for us to be able to actually get on the field and play 8 games and be together that long, it's something none of us really foresaw taking place in August. So I've always kind of tried to lean towards what it is, be appreciative of what it is we had and what opportunities we did have, and the way our guys took advantage of them. And to that point, this is a team I'll long remember and long admire, just for the way they handled the circumstances, going back really to March 13th, the way they handled each and every step along the way. As I said earlier, just an unprecedented time. And that it's a reflection of all of us in America. It's just been a really different time, a very hard time. This is a great example of it, a Zoom conference or Zoom gathering. I think all of us will be happy when we have the day where it's more face-to-face interaction as opposed to this, but it's just one of those adjustments and things you have to do in times like this. So anyway, it is what it is, and the players are able to go home, hopefully have a good time reuniting with their families, and just having some downtime, and we're eager to greet them back on campus, the returners back on the 25th. We had a great senior class, and they wish them all the best as they move forward. Just a tremendous group of young people, and they really were the pulse of the team. They were the ones that led us during these really tough times. So I'm extremely appreciative for everything they've done, and extremely just impressed for anybody that runs the race, be it 4 years, 5 years in the program, all the things they do academically, all the standards socially they have to adhere to, and then on top of it, compete at the highest level in a great conference. So, and to that point, I just, you step back and look at it, what an amazing time it is for Iowa athletics and our program. Extremely proud of our players and the job that our players and staff have done. Over the last 6 years, we made some major changes after 14. We finished on in a way that we weren't happy with our last couple games. We just didn't play in a way that was representative of what we wanted Hawkeye football to look like. Made major changes back then, and happy to say now, over the last 6 years, we're third in the conference for total wins. Ohio State leads, Wisconsin's 3 ahead of us right now, and then we come in third, tied with Penn State. And for any of you that have golfing buddies from Michigan, I think we're 4 ahead of them over the last 6 years now. So you can, maybe win a nickel on that one. But anyway, our team's done a great job. They've played really well on the field. Proud of the players. And then step back and look at just what's going on in our department right now. We have a chance to be a top 15 football team this year. Certainly the basketball team is playing extremely well, just doing a fantastic job. You look at the success Lisa and women's basketball have had, and then go back, one of the more heartbreaking things that I've witnessed over this past year. You think about the basketball teams not being able to finish their seasons, their tournaments, and then wrestling just on the verge of a national championship back in March and not being able to compete. And think about, guys like Spencer Lee, not having a chance to earn the national title. So, those opportunities have been missed, yet we have great programs and great people involved with them. So that's been a tradition at Iowa. I've been here 31 years, I guess now, and that's something I've really enjoyed, is just working with such quality people, whether it be our athletes or the staff members here. And I think everybody can be really proud of where the department's at this point. To that point, it all happens because of support, and support is so critical and so important in college athletics. You think about football right now, we just finished our 5th year in the Sue and Lenore Hansen Performance Center. What a boost that's given us, and we made some changes in terms of how we practiced, all kinds of things to the program in 15. We just did it again this summer. But you have to have facilities, and this facility has given us an opportunity to be competitive with everybody in our conference and everybody in the country. It continues to be an arms race out there, but we have such a beautiful facility. It's one where our players can work effectively and efficiently. They've got everything they need. All the important things, the core things, are available to them here without fluff and all the extravagant stuff, but the core things are here, and they're first class. And that really was our intent when we set out to build it. You think about the north end zone, the Patient Family Club zone that we use for recruiting. What an addition that's been. And although we weren't able to enjoy our fans this year, that has made a real difference from a noise standpoint down on the field. We're eager to get our fans back with us. But it's just made our stadium as good as Kinnick has always been. It's even better now. It's just a big time facility, and what a great addition that's been too. So my point is, that's just illustrations of the continued growth and improvement to the program from a facility standpoint. But most of all, again, it gets back to the kind of support that we have. And I just want to express my appreciation, to everybody that's involved in that. And it's really interesting, scholarships cost money, obviously, and the scholarships are what enable our athletes to come to college. You think about a guy like Mekhi Sargent from Key West, Florida, who came here as kind of unconventional path, but first kid in his family to graduate, and he's very proud. He graduated back in December, very proud of that. I think he'll have an NFL career, but it won't be long. It's going to be 3 to 5, 7 years at the longest, but he's got his degree in hand, and he did a great job and has been a great ambassador for our university, will continue to be so. So to me, those are the stories that make it all so important. You got that, the scholarship money, the facilities, just how important they are. And it really gets back to what I learned in 1981 when I came here from the University of Pittsburgh. And the University of Pittsburgh, great place. We had an outstanding program. But I quickly learned the grass level support and just the interest and genuine support of the program at Iowa was so different and so unique relative to what I had ever witnessed. And 31 years later, that's still where I stand. It's amazing. We're so fortunate to have so many people that really are passionate about the programs and passionate about the student athletes and passionate about supporting them. And it does take support. So just so appreciative of that. I know I speak on behalf of all the coaches in our athletic department, not just football. We appreciate all you do to help us go out and compete against the best players in the world, actually, and the best conference in the world from my standpoint. The Big Ten is just a phenomenal place to compete, and I can't think of a better place than Iowa City to be doing it. So I just want to say thank you personally, and also on behalf of all the coaches in the department, and wish all of you the best. Let's all keep our fingers crossed that we will be back in Kinnick. We look forward to seeing you in person and hearing you in person, more importantly. We'll look forward to that day. Let's hope for the country's sake as well. We're on a better path, starting now, in this new year. So we'll all keep our fingers crossed, but most importantly, just want to say thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kirk, and thanks to all of this evening's speakers. For all of you who are watching, thank you for joining us. Before we sign off, I do want to acknowledge the excellent work of our Phoenix, Iowa Club. If you're in or near Phoenix, I encourage you to join them. I know that post-COVID, many of our Iowa clubs around the world are looking forward to gathering again for a variety of activities, including game watches. You can find out more information on our website, foriowa.org. And please remember, if you're interested in supporting our COVID-19 emergency funds, you can find those giving links below. Thank you again for joining us, and best wishes to everyone. Go Hawks.